What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to build a 1,000 horsepower Honda engine in your garage. Yes, you guys, you heard right. I am going to be building a 1,000 horsepower K-Series engine for the MR2. Really excited. I've been gathering parts for quite some time now, and I figured I would go ahead and just do a really detailed step-by-step video of how I'm going to be putting this engine together. I'm going to show you guys and walk you guys through everything. So without further ado, let's get on today's video. Okay, so I got everything laid out here. These are pretty much just all the standard parts that I'm going to be using to be building my engine. The engine is going to be a k24 A1. It's a CRV motor that I did send off to CSS to get the 900 horsepower plus package. So it's got the O-ring block and everything. I'm just going to kind of show you guys, give you an overview of the parts I'll be using. This is just a stock A1, K24 A1 crank that I got fresh from the machine shop, ready to go. I had them go ahead and just do a micro polish job on it, so everything is all good. OEM specs, and I got my set of pistons here, which I sent along with my block to CSS, and they went through everything and put them in the block and then set my piston to wall clearance. So these are all good to go. They even went through and numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4, just that way I know which piston belongs in each cylinder. So that's good. That's all set to go. So these are some CP. Let me pull one out here. These are CP Carrillo 10-to-1 pistons. These are a forged piston, 10-to-1 compression. This is an 87.5 mil bore because I did bore out the block and then remachine the cylinder walls to accept this piston. So everything's brand new, fresh, ready to go. And I do have some Wiseco boost line connecting rods. These have the ARP upgraded rod bolts. Nice beefy rod that's basically just a cross between an I-beam and an H-beam rod. It's a pretty new rod, so looking forward to running these. And then I did also get the upgraded wrist pins as well. So these are a little bit more thicker on the walls, if you see, which make them overall just a lot stronger. If you compare one of these wrist pins compared to one of those wrist pins, you can see that this has a lot more material on it, so this makes it just overall stronger. That way you don't have any sort of weak points in the engine. Go ahead and kind of put this back here. Walk you guys through what else I have. Excuse me. All right, and then so just kind of keep everything all balanced out, I am going to be running an ATI street dampener, harmonic balancer, I guess you can call it. Just kind of keep everything internally just all nice and balanced. Don't want to take any issues with this motor or any chances with this motor. I got a brand new in the box OEM factory Honda RBC VTC gear. That way I can run this in, I can run this on my cams and then get a little bit more timing out of it. So brand new in the package, brand new RBC 50-degree cam gear. So I'll be running those on the cams whenever I get the cylinder head back from the machine shop. Like I said, reason why you want to run one of these because it allows the tuner to advance the timing just a little bit more. The stock one's only about 25 degrees, I believe. Correct me if I am wrong down in the comment section below. I have a stock RSX Type S water pump, which has the oil cooler. So I will be running an RSX Type S oil cooler on the engine, just kind of keep things a little bit more cool. I have here King bearings. I'm going to be running King bearings, guys. Pretty much think that they're the best. This is all standard size bearings. Then I got here just some headlight sockets. Just got some silicone hoses and everything from Hybrid Racing for the oil cooler. Just trying to keep everything fresh, new, plus they look pretty cool. And I got some Speed Factory L19 head studs as well. So got those. A little bit upgraded from regular ARP head studs. Just give me some more clamping force. I will be running an OEM Honda K-Series head gasket. And got a couple other odds and ends here. This is going to be a K. It's basically just timing chain guide. I went with a K motor. Didn't really feel the need to spend a lot of money on this piece just because it is just an aluminum guide that runs on the bottom of the engine. So pretty simple setup on that. What that allows you to do is whenever the motor is in the car, it allows you to take off the cylinder head and then disconnect the timing chain, and doesn't allow the timing chain to really drop. And then also when the engine's running, it kind of keeps everything nice and guided and all together. So that's a pretty cool little piece. Got a brand new crankshaft bolt from Honda just to go with the dampener here. And then on this, I have a upgraded crankshaft sprocket for the timing chain as well. Got that from HPT Autosport. Thank you very much. Really fast delivery. Shout out to them. Comes with the timing chain sprocket as well. All brand new factory Honda stuff. But on this one, they modify it. And the way they modify it is, let me get it out of the bag, 1 second. They modify this gear to accept a key. On the stock one, this is not there. This accepts the key, so when you put it onto the crank, and you can kind of put a little keyway in there just to kind of lock it onto the crank, and it's a lot more stronger than the factory piece. Just the factory ones have this little tab, and then with a lot of power and everything, you can take a chance of that breaking, and you don't want that to break whenever your timing, especially when that relates with your timing chain, because if this breaks, then your timing gets all out of whack, and then valves kiss the pistons, and it's just not a good time. So that's kind of like the basic rundown that I have for the bottom end of the engine. I got the engine over here. I'm just kind of prepping it. I'm just painting it up just to make it look a little nicer. I'm going to go ahead and finish this real quick, and then I'll show you guys what the CSS did for my block. So, which that is a really pretty piece, so really excited to show you guys. So let me go ahead and finish doing this real quick, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Also, guys, real quick, I just want to let you know that if you want to follow this build also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is THOMPSONBUILT INC. Once again, that's THOMPSONBUILT INC, Thompson Built Inc. So if you guys want to go ahead and follow it, follow all my build stuff. It's kind of where I post all my pictures and process of like where I'm at and stuff on build. So make sure you go ahead and follow me there. All right, guys, so this is the block I'm going to be using. This is a K24 CRV block. I think I already said that. This is a K24 A1 block. I kind of just painted it just to make it look a little bit more fresh. I do this with all the engines that I do. Just makes it overall a lot nicer. This is the 900 horsepower CSS package. So as you can see here, what CSS does is they kind of go in and they mill out the head and machine press a block guard into the top of the block here, and then they machine it and make sure it's all nice and really nice finish, as you can see there. Super high quality stuff. They do amazing work. Just kind of give you guys a little bit better view of it. Looks absolutely amazing. So shout out to CSS. Thank you guys so much. Did an amazing job. So what you guys see here around the top of this cylinder walls, or on the top of the cylinder walls here, are just a machined groove that you take some copper wire and you place it down in here, and what that does is when you put the head gasket on it and you tighten it down, it just kind of creates a better surface or sealing of the head gasket. That way you have less chance of blowing your head gasket and stuff underneath high boost pressures. So this is going to go ahead and be my block, and now that we kind of got it all squared away with the parts that I'm going to be using, I'm going to go ahead and start showing you guys kind of what to do and what to set up first. Alright, so what I'm doing here is just kind of going through all of the cylinders and wiping them up, cleaning them up. You really just want to make sure everything is really clean. Even though everything looks clean, you know, you still just want to go ahead and wipe it down. Take a little bit of brake cleaner. 1 second here. Take a little big brake cleaner. I use white paper towels, guys, just that way it kind of shows dirt a little bit more. Oops. Take a little bit of brake cleaner on a rag. And just kind of go ahead and clean the cylinder walls. And as you can see there, brake cleaner is just kind of removing all that gunk on the cylinder wall. You want to make sure that everything is as clean as possible before you throw it together. I'm going to go ahead and finish that with the rest of the cylinders. Alright guys, so what I'm doing here is I'm assembling the pistons to the rods. what I do is I kind of get some assembly lube here, and I just kind of lube up the wrist pin area here, and then just both holes on the side skirt itself. Now, these do go a certain way. They do go in a certain orientation. Whenever you do go ahead and put them together, these rods right here, they have tangs on them that holds the bearings. These right here always face the exhaust side. And then you could tell a lot of the pistons sometimes are either labeled underneath. It'll say like a EH or EX and then have an arrow pointing to it. It'll tell you which side's the exhaust. But in this case, it doesn't. But an easy way to tell is the intake ports are always going to be larger than the exhaust, just because the intake volume is going to be more than what the exhaust is on this head. So I know that this is the intake side. So I know that the intake side is going to be on this side, and then this is going to be the exhaust side. So I'm going to go ahead and then just lube these up, and then throw my wrist pins, or my, the wrist pins in, along with the C-clips, and then I will have them all assembled, and they will pretty much just look like this. As you can see, they're all together, and man, aren't these pretty. Whee! This motor is going to be stout. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and knock out this last piston, and then what we'll do is we'll go outside and go ahead and gap the piston rings to the block. Alright guys, so I'm kind of going through and I'm gapping my rings here. I already knocked 2 of them out, but I'm going to do the third one for demonstration purposes, just kind of show you guys what you want to do. Got the top ring here. When you open them up out of the box, I like to go ahead and just wipe them down, because even though they're brand new in the box, they still ship them with some sort of light coat of oil, and that kind of attracts some dust particles and stuff, so they are a little dirty. Go ahead and wipe them off, make sure they're clean, and I make sure I lube up my cylinders, just that way when I'm putting my rings in, putting it in and out of the cylinder, I'm not doing it on a dry wall surface. So I got the first 2 rings for these pistons done. I'm setting my top rings at 22 thousandths and the bottom rings at 24 thousandths, and I got this one here. I'm just going to kind of show you guys. What you want to do is when you pick up your ring, you want to clean it, and you want to choose, you want to see where, if there's any markings on it. I don't know if you can see. Come on now. Gosh, my camera just doesn't want to focus. Okay, so if you see there, it's got a marking. Anytime you see these letters, that means that the ring faces up. So the letters go point up when you're putting it on the piston. So we're going to go ahead and put it in the cylinder wall here real quick. I'm trying to do this one-handed. So just kind of press her on down in there, and then once you get it in there, I go ahead and grab my piston. And I just kind of use the piston just to go ahead and push the ring down, and make sure that whenever it is pushed down, that it's even. You want to make sure that it's even down in the cylinder. And what you're measuring here is that gap right there in the actual piston ring itself. What I use is just some regular feeler gauges. I got my feeler gauge out right now. That's a 25 because I was doing the bottom ones. I just wanted to make sure that 25 wasn't going in. Hold on one second. Let me get my feeler gauge out. These are a little crusty. Just because when I moved down here, everything kind of rusted. It's a 19, 24, 23, 22. So what I'm going to do is, since I want 22 thousandths on this top ring, I'm going to drop down to a 21, and then file it to a 21, just so I know I'm getting close to my target. So I'm going to go ahead and see if a 21 goes and fits in this gap here. Like I said, what you're measuring is a little gap in that ring, and it does not want to go in. So you got to take that ring out and file it. Go ahead and pull the ring out. Just pull up. And then what I have here is just a piston ring filer that I ordered off of eBay. It was like 50 bucks. And what you do is you take your ring and you want to put it on here. And then when you put it on here, you want to push it up against these 2 little studs on each side. And you want to make sure that you choose one side of the ring that you want to file. You don't want to hop on both sides of the ring. You don't want to file on one side and file on the other. You want to stick with one side of the ring. I always just choose the one that the letters are on just because it's easier for me to remember. And then what you do is you kind of rotate it and it files it down. And then you just take the ring and you put it back down in the cylinder and then you remeasure. It's kind of a tedious process, takes a little bit, but this is something that you don't want to get wrong and you don't want to mess up. So take your time, be patient, and get it done right. So I'm going to go ahead and knock this out real quick. And then once I get them all fitted and gapped, then I'm going to go ahead and install them on the pistons, and then we can toss them in the block. So I'm going to do that real quick and then get this thing together. One thing I forgot to mention was that when you do file your piston rings, you want to make sure that you spin it this way, which grinds inward on the ring instead of outward on the ring, because if you were to grind outward on the ring, that could kind of take any burrs and pointing them out towards outside of the cylinder wall. So when you put your piston ring in, you could, take the chances of scratching your cylinder wall. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that it does file towards the inside of the ring. Just forgot to mention that in my last clip. Alright, so I got all my piston ring gaps set. I went 22 thousandths on the top and 24 thousandths on the top. On the bottom. CP recommended that you do 22 on the top and 25 on the bottom, but I did 24 just to have it just a little tighter. So piston ring gaps are set. That one is already clocked. Piston rings gaps are clocked. Piston rings are clocked in the right orientation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my bearings in, put my crank in. I'm going to measure the main bearing clearances with plastic gauge here. What that kind of does is that just double checks everything. It's got a little unit of measurement. So what you do is you just take this little piece of plastic gauge, you cut a little section out, and then after you put your crank in, you just kind of put a little piece on every bit of the mains, and then you put the girdle on top, you torque it to spec, and then that little piece of plastic gauge just smushes, and you pretty much just measure the smush after it spreads out. And then this is the measurements here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the crank ready. I'm going to go ahead and put my bearings in. I'm using King race bearings. I think they're the best. I'm going to go ahead and put the bottom main rings in here. Before I do that though, I'm going to grab my brake cleaner here and just kind of clean them out a little bit here, just to make sure that the surface is all nice and clean. As you can see in the bottom of my block, I did have CSS go ahead and notch the block in order to clear my rods, because these are some big old rods, and upon rotation they did hit the block, so they just had to notch them out a little bit. If you see here, just notch it just to make room, so that way they clear. Okay, so got that clean. Now you're just going to go ahead and grab your bearing here, and they have little tangs here, and these little tangs just kind of match up to the block here. So actually I think these actually are the wrong ones. Let me see here. These are the girdle side. Yeah, and these are the block side. Cut these here. Working with one hand, so bear with me here. Alright, so I got this opened up here. Go ahead and you take your bearing, just kind of place it in, make sure the tangs go in a little groove there, and then you just kind of press it down, and that's it. So that one's in. Just gonna make sure that the surfaces are flush, the bearing's not, offset at all. Grab this one, put it in the tang, put the tang in. Just make sure it's flush. Oops, wrong one. Heh. Okay, so I got all the rod bearings in, as you can see there, or the main bearings in, as you can see there. Okay. Alright, so I'm going through and just add my bearings to the girdle now. Put it right there in that little thing. Press down. Make sure it's flat in there. Shouldn't have to force these or anything. They should just kind of slide right in. These are standard size bearings because I only have my crank polished. Oops. I only have my crank polished, so there's not really any need to go oversize or anything like that. So just standard size will work. Now, if I was to remove material off of my crank, like do a 10-10 job on it, that would mean it would remove 10 thousandths of material. Then you would get a tighter bearing to make up for the compensation of the material removed off the crank. So now I do have my crank back in here now. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my plastic gauge, and then I'm going to lay it on each one of these journals here. And then we'll go ahead and put the girdle on, lay it on top of the block, and then we'll torque it in sequence with my torque gauge and read our measurements. All right, so I got my plastic gauge laid out right there on each one of the journals. Now I'm going to go ahead and smack the girdle on real quick. Alright guys, so I went ahead and I torqued all the girdle bolts using my torque wrench and my angle gauge here. Honda recommends you torque each girdle bolt to 22 foot-pounds and then 56 degrees after that, which should come out to about, 55 pounds-ish. So I was going to show you guys how to use the angle gauge on there. You can get it from any of your local auto parts store. That's what it's called, angle gauge. I got it for like 10 bucks at O'Reilly's. So anyways, I went ahead and untorqued them in sequence, and now I got all the bolts loose. I'm going to go ahead and pull the girdle off, and then we will measure our clearances. Alright, so I got all my plastic gauge laid out, took the girdle back off, and as you can see, plastic gauge is now all smushed. And what you do is you grab a piece of paper here. I'm targeting between 15 and 20 thou, so if I can be anywhere between here and here, I will be good. So take your little piece of paper, lay down next to the plastic gauge here, and as you can see, it's probably right between, it's kind of between the 15 and 20 thou, so that's good. This one kind of shifted a little bit, but still squished out. It's about 15, here. About 15 thou. This one's about 15 thou. One's 15 thou. And this one's 15 thou. So you know all these are within spec and all the bearing clearances are good on here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of brake cleaner, wipe off the crank, or wipe off the plastic gauge off the crank, and then we'll go ahead, put the girdle back on. And then we'll go ahead and throw our pistons in, and then once we get the pistons in, we'll go ahead and put the rod caps on, and then we'll see what our rod bearing clearances are. I'll tell you what you want to run on the Honda crank is you want to be between 15 and 20 thousandths. So the fact that these are 15 and they're all the same all the way across means that everything's on point. So anyways, let's go ahead and keep going. So before I put the crank back in, I'm just going to go ahead and take some brake cleaner and just kind of shoot out all the oil passages. I mean, they should be clean, but you know, you just want to make sure. And I just don't want to be taking any chances, but kind of blow them out a little bit. I don't think there was one for the center. Okay, so we'll let that kind of dry off. Just kind of blow it all out. Make sure there's, you know, you want to make sure there's nothing, no debris in there, especially when you put your new bearings on. You just want to make sure any gunk's out, any debris is out. So go ahead and let that sit. Let the brake cleaner dry off a little bit, and then we'll throw it back in the block. Alright, so cleaned out the crank with some brake cleaner. Got it all cleaned up now. I did pull out each individual bearing and clean the backside off of them, because when they ship them, it comes with a light coat of oil, and you want to clean that off of them so when you put them in there, they have less chance of spinning. So I got those all cleaned off and back inside the block. Now I'm just going to go ahead and take my assembly lube, and I'm just going to go ahead and lube it up. You know, can't really run too much, honestly. More the better. Can't ever have too much lube. Never too much lube. Go ahead and alright, so I got that all lubed up now. We're going to go ahead and put in our thrust washers here. And these thrust washers go groove side outwards, and they kind of just sit right on the inside of this journal here where it's got this little notch out. So let me open these up real quick. I just dropped them. Okay, I got the thrust washers in there. Just kind of put a little bit of assembly lube on the back side of them, just kind of help them kind of glue on there. That way they stay in place. So those are on. Now we're going to go ahead and toss in the crank. Alright, so I got the assembly lube on, I got the crank in. I'm just going to go ahead and put some more assembly lube on it. Like I said, guys, can't ever have too much assembly lube. I am not going to use this stuff lightly. Okay. Just make sure you got plenty of assembly lube. Alright. Now, I'm going to go ahead and grab my girdle. I did pop all the bearings and clean the back side of the oil off of the bearings as well. Some brake cleaner and a towel. Push them down back in the girdle, and the crank's just about to be put in. So we'll go ahead and toss this girdle on there, and then the crank will officially be inside the engine. Alright, so I got one piston rod in, and then I connected to the bottom of the crank. Now I'm doing my second one. What I'm using here is just a Wiseco piston ring compressor. This is bore specific. And the reason why I got one of these is just because it's as simple as pushing it in and you're done. I mean, there is no fighting it with those cheap piston ring compressors. You know, these ones work extremely well. So this one's in the piston. Now I'm gonna go, or this piston's in the cylinder. So now I'm gonna go ahead and push it down until I can feel it kind of start to button up against the crank, and then I'm gonna go ahead and spin her. I did toss my bearing on there. I'm going to try to refrain from spinning the crank because I am going to plastic gauge these, so I'm going to move this rod right there, and now I'm going to go ahead and push up against the back. Oh, come on. What I'm doing, it's kind of hard to do with one hand, but what I am doing is trying to, bear with me. I'm going to have to put y'all down. Alright, sorry about that. So I have the bottom of the rod now pushed up against the crank. Go ahead and put these, put the tang on the tang. Press it in there. Go ahead and toss my rod bolts in. Well, I guess I don't really have to toss the rod bolts in now, because what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to take this back off. I'm going to go ahead and put my plastic gauge that I have on the two journals underneath here, and then we're going to go ahead and put the rod caps back on, tighten them to torque spec, and then take them back off and measure the squish. Basically the same thing that we did with our main bearings. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, got the plastic gauge on that one. Got the plastic gauge on that one already. What did I do with my rod cap? Oh, right here in front of my face. Alright, make sure the tang goes with the tang. Like that. Try to want to make sure that you go ahead and put pressure on it and try not to let everything move, because there is no lube on here, so you want to make sure that everything kind of stays where it's supposed to be. Okay. So, got those snugged up. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my torque wrench, and I'm going to look up the torque specs to see what the rod bolts are supposed to be at, and then we'll go ahead and torque them, pull it back off, measure it, and we'll have our clearances. Alright, so I got the rod cats off. I did torque those down to 60 foot-pounds, because it says right here I need to be torquing these down to 60 foot-pounds. And then I do have a rod bolt stretch gauge that I will use to verify my torque after I final torque it. But I did get them torqued down, and let me grab my thing here. And it looks like these are right at 15 thousandths. So that's actually pretty good. That one's right at 15 thousandths as well. So I know that those two are good to go. I'll final torque those because those are at 15 thousandths. And then we'll do the two inner ones. One thing I forgot to mention is that when you put the girdle on, make sure you have go ahead and toss in a brand new rear main seal and then throw some Honda Bond on it. Because I forgot and I had to take it all back apart. So anyways, let's keep on trucking. Alright, so I got those torqued to spec now. I did install on the rod bolts some of the ARP lubricant that comes with the rods. I have a brand new crankshaft pulley bolt that I put in the end of my crank. And now I'm just going to go ahead and turn her over to see if I can feel anything. Oh yeah. That spins nice. Fantastic. Alright, so it spins over freely. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the two other rods and pistons in and then check the rod bearing clearances as well. And then when I'm done torquing them with my torque wrench, I'm going to go ahead and use my rod bolt stretch gauge, which I bought from ARP, which I got right here. Which basically every time you tighten down a bolt, obviously, you know, it stretches, and this is just a good way to measure the stretch of the bolt, and then it's a way to double check the torque, because you want to make sure those are 100% on point. So yeah, so anyways, I did take a break for a little while and I went to go get the cylinder head, boys, and look at this. Absolutely beautiful. So the cylinder head I'm going to be running is just a K24 A2 cylinder head. It's the RBB4 head. And so this one's got like the upgraded, you know, piston or upgraded cams and bigger valves and stuff. These are Ferrera 6000 series competition plus valves. So if I do drop a valve or anything, it'll just bend, it won't break and shatter into many pieces. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully I won't hit any valves, but in case I do, you know, that's all that will happen. And as well, these are, you know, rated up for a lot of boost and a lot of heat. So just a extra precaution I took as well. And I did go ahead and install some bronze valve guides as well. Shout out to H Squared Racing up in Houston. They did an amazing job. This head came out absolutely beautiful. So without further ado, let's keep going, get these two other pistons and rods in, and then the bottom and the end will essentially be together. Alright guys, so last night I got the rest of the pistons and rods installed in the block. I got all the piston rings and everything clocked good, got them set in, and the bottom end of the assembly is now completed. I also had some time to install the copper O-rings on the top, as you can see there. So those are all done, copper O-rings are done, and everything turns over beautifully. So, isn't that beautiful? So guys, so that's going to do it for this part of the video. I just wanted to show you all how I assemble the bottom end in my 1000 horsepower K-Series build for the MR2. Make sure you go ahead and smash the subscribe button so you can follow the build, and make sure you go ahead and like the video. And then if you have any questions, leave them down, or suggestions, leave them down in the comments section below. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I'm going to go ahead and upload part 2, and that's basically just going to assemble the head and put the head on the motor and just kind of button everything up. So I really appreciate y'all watching. I'll freaking see y'all later.